The inexhaustible power of water. Over 75 years ago, one man showed us how to purify water naturally and how to harness its colossal power. If we were to follow Victor Schauberger's teachings today, pure and healthy water would be within our reach, as well as the ability to produce almost limitless amounts of energy from plain water and air for next to nothing. If we replace the death technology of the explosion with the biotechnology of the implosion, mankind's biggest problems could be solved, which is the reason why it has been held back to this day. And I quote, "As far back as history permits us to see, every man who attempted to solve the mystery of water encountered bitter opposition. Every hint that we find in the ancient books, which might explain the true nature of water, has been blotted out in the next edition. Protecting the secret of water is a means to protect the interest power of money. Only in an economy of scarcity can interest thrive. If the problem of the production of water were to be solved, making it possible to produce any desired amount in quality of water at any given location, then man will have the power to make the expanses of the deserts bloom. The price of food and the cost of mechanical power would sink to such low levels that speculators would be able to gain nothing from them. Free access to nutrition and mechanical energy are such radical ideas that our concept of the world in all ideologies will be turned upside down. The secret of water is the capital of capital, which is why any attempt to reveal it is ruthlessly terminated in embryo." These lines were written by the remarkable Victor Schauberger more than 60 years ago. A man, you might say, had been sent by the Most High to proclaim once again the true significance of water to an enlightened modern man. A man of uncompromising honesty and dedication to nature. A man who faced bitter opposition his whole lifetime before dying alone and impoverished, a broken man. Yet, what he left behind was an inheritance of incalculable worth, insights which still inspire and which form the building blocks of many astounding developments. And this is by uncovering something that was already known to the Incas, the Mongols, the ancient Cretans, and the Tibetan monks, that all water creates vortices. And that if you let it flow naturally, you might just experience some real miracles. Victor Schauberger's discoveries are simple, yet truly revolutionary. They tear down several of the laws of hydrology and concede far more power and significance to water than man would like to allow. Victor Schauberger was born in 1885. As the fifth of 9 children in the back of Beyond by Lake Plockstein in Austria. His uncle had been the last imperial huntmaster in Bad Ischl during the days of Emperor Franz Joseph. His father was Master Forester, as was his grandfather, great-grandfather, and even his father before that. Victor was a real, quote, son of the forest, who would roam alone in the wild woods around the lake for days on end, observing nature in a state of purity and preservation that today no longer exists. Victor's father wanted to send him to university to study forestry, but Victor refused, fearing that the academics would cloud his unprejudiced, innocent view of nature as they had done to his brother. He went to an ordinary forestry school instead and became a forester. Schauberger quickly learned that water does not enjoy being exposed to sunlight. For example, there was a spring over which a stone hut had been built long ago. The hut was later torn down, and the spring lay exposed to the sunlight. Before much time had passed, the spring dried up, and no one could say why. When the stone hut was rebuilt, the water returned. The Romans covered their springs with stone slabs, leaving only a round mouthpiece free, and attaching the outlet pipe in such a way that not even air could get in. It's obvious that water loves the shade, which is why springs are found hidden in the deep forests or in clefts in rocks, and why a natural river or stream protects itself against direct sunlight with shady trees and bushes on its banks. I never looked at it as if the river chose to go through shady areas or through cliffs and rocks, as if it was avoiding the sun. I always assumed that the environment around the river sprang up because of the river. It's very interesting how a consciousness is placed on the river here. Let's continue. Neither did it escape Schauberger's attention that during thaws, rising floodwaters built up banks of debris, which were often carried away on cool, clear nights. He came to the conclusion that the carrying and suction power of water is at its greatest when its temperature is low and its flow is undisturbed. He was able to prove this for the first time in the winter of 1918, when Linz faced an extreme shortage of firewood due to the war. There was more than enough windrow lying in the nearby Priel Hills, but no pack animals to drag it down to the city, or streams big enough to float it down. The hitherto obscure forester Schauberger proffered his services. He created opportunity. That's what it's about. If you know you got something, or if you know you for sure about something, get out there and create the opportunity. Or at least be aware enough for when that opportunity presents itself, you're ready to take advantage and provide the solution or solve any problems necessary. Let's continue. The hitherto obscure forester Schauberger proffered his services. He proposed using a small, rocky mountain stream to get the wood down into the valley. A stream which the experts said was totally unsuitable. For the first time, Victor Schauberger faced accusations that his ideas were folly and doomed to failure, and it wouldn't be the last time that he would prove his critics wrong. Unperturbed, he waited until the early hours of the morning, when the water is at its coldest, before releasing the wood into the water at just the right moment. It took only one night to get all the wood, 16,000 cubic meters, down to the valley floor. Later in his career, he would draw further attention with his outstanding log flume. So just through observation, Victor noticed that water avoided the sun. It moved the best when the temperature was low, and that its flow was undisturbed, that it could just kind of move on its path and go where it's going. through the application of this observation, when the town needed him, or when the opportunity arose to apply what he has observed as the truth, he jumped at it. Even when people said that it's not possible, he believed his observation over what was being told to him, and he proved his observation correct. He ended up moving 16,000 cubic meters of wood, these are trees, down to the valley floor where no one said it was possible. Trust yourself, trust what you see. Trust the understanding that you have gained through experience. Let's continue. The trout and salmon that swam in the mountain streams were another source of fascination for Victor Schauberger. How on earth did they manage to stay stationary in the water, even in a mountain torrent in full spate? How could they escape fast as greased lightning against the current, instead of letting themselves be swept away by it, and up to the surface, not into the sheltering depths? Did the trout, too, owe this capability to the water temperature? No sooner had the thought occurred to him than he decided to find out. He had 100 liters of water warmed up and released into a stream about 100 meters upstream from a trout. This small amount of water could hardly make a big difference in the stream's temperature. Yet, soon afterwards, the trout became uneasy and started striking the water forcefully with its fins. It could barely hold itself in position, and indeed soon found itself washed downstream. So the trout that usually can just sit in the water and just kind of ride the stream to the point where it doesn't push him away, not only does it not sweep him away, it also moves against it and jumps. But when the temperature was thrown off even a little bit, it threw off the trout's ability to just flow with the river. Let's continue. Victor Schauberger asked himself how trout managed to get past rapids and waterfalls, and why they jumped higher the more forceful the water. He observed the trout floating motionlessly upward in the stream, pouring downward before being slung into the inflowing water above, just like that. Only after decades of intense observation would he find the answer. We know today that every force, material or immaterial, produces an equally strong counterforce. Exactly as a tornado pulls the masses of air outside of it downward before sucking them upward again on the inside, naturally flowing water too produces energy that flows in the opposite direction to the water, upwards instead of downwards. This flow of energy, visible inside a waterfall as a ray of light within the water, is used by the trout like a water spout to move upward. Naturally flowing water automatically creates a vortex, just like a tornado would. So the trout, when the conditions are proper, meaning the temperature is how it's supposed to be and nothing is out of whack, the trout can flow with the river, locate these naturally occurring vortexes in the flowing water and use it to shoot itself out into the air, out into the upper realm, the upper depths of the water, just by being calm and observing. It takes advantage of naturally occurring phenomena. And there's nothing to say that we can't do the same, except our lack of awareness of it and our lack of observation. Let's continue. Schauberger made another unbelievable discovery. On an icy moonlit winter night, he watched stones as big as a man's head loosen themselves from the basin of a mountain stream, circle like the trout before its great leap, hover upward, and then bob on the surface. These are heavy stones. He couldn't believe his eyes. What power was at work here? The same power of levitation, dormant in the water, which lets the trout jump. Not all of the stones levitated though. Only the polished, egg-shaped ones rose up to dance on the surface, apparently weightless. The rough stones lay motionless on the bottom, as one would expect from a rock. Why? The egg shape is the child of the vortex. Geometrically speaking, it arises inside a hyperbolic vortex, and since water too forms vortices, egg shapes can be particularly easily moved and break free of the law of gravity. You can test this yourself by taking a round, tall, thin jar, filling it with water, and slipping an egg into it. By lightly swirling the water, using a pencil for example, you will be able to see the egg slowly rising from the bottom and floating to the top, where it stays as long as the eddy remains intact. So the egg shape is the child of the vortex, and vortices occur in naturally flowing water. When the firmament separated the waters above from the waters below, I'm sure this created a stream or a waterfall of some type, or flowing water. So the waters flowing from above to the waters below will create a vortices. And it was very interesting that Neil deGrasse Tyson recently, or not too long ago, mentioned something about the earth being quote unquote egg shaped. These stones in the river is a microcosm of our earth on this plane. The vortex that's created, the vortex created from the free-flowing water, from the firmament down to the earth, or from the waters above down to the waters below, balance our plane in the same way the stones were balanced in the river. All of Victor Schauberger's discoveries, all of his work, was just him observing and working in conjunction with, as opposed to controlling and attempting to force an outcome. The article used in this segment was found at factsarefacts.com. If you search the inexhaustible power of water, it should come up.